Otto, and I watched a lot of movies this month, so time to talk about them. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with a cultural event which I just recently took part in, which was the Twilight saga. Watched all 5 in October, which was intense to say the least. I did not love it. I didn't walk away from it finishing all 5 and being like, damn, like something has changed in my life. In fact, we're gonna need an F tier because these were really bad, I'm gonna be honest. Some less than others. I would say these 2 were probably the best, and then these 3 I'm gonna have trouble discerning between. They're bad for different reasons. Some of them, like Breaking Dawn Part 1, are like laughable and like, dare I say, cringe. Eclipse is like painfully trying to be like dark, and like New Moon is just not even on purpose, just awful. Like it's trying its heart out, and in some aspects it's not even that bad. Like when I think about it, I can almost like excuse it, because compared to Twilight, it is so much like more enjoyable, less like monotonous and like dry and like dark, and but at the same time, like it's an awful movie. So is Twilight, to be fair, but out of all 5, I did feel like Twilight had the most sort of charm or like appeal as a movie, where there was like a sort of like mystery aspect of it, of like what the hell is going on. The one that I do think was a standout out of the 5 was the finale, the Breaking Dawn Part 2, and it might be because I saw it in theaters, because they were showing all of these. They were doing like a Twilight re-screening, and seeing them with my friends and like a giant audience of people that all love this was pretty intense, and it was cool, but at the same time it just made me question a lot of things, and it made me feel even more like out of the loop, because I feel like people like Twilight for one of 2 reasons: ironically or out of nostalgia, and I could not do either. I didn't get any of like the inside jokes about any of the characters or like certain lines that are like infamous, and then I also was not reminded of when I was 11 watching these, so there was something that I was just inherently missing about this series as a whole. But this one I probably had the best time with, especially like, slight spoiler for Twilight, when it was like the vision. Yeah, the shudder that went through that theater was memorable. Speaking of watching with friends, I did a lot of rewatching in October, namely The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, which I've talked about before, so I won't super get into, but one of my favorite anime movies. I've done like a whole video on like anime movies, which is why I'm not gonna super get into it, but it holds up. That's all I'll say. I cried, they cried, good time. So good, so whimsical, so pure, so sweet, and like happy and warm, and it's so good. Some other rewatches, less comforting this time, were some short films that were, for the most part, all 3 of these are on YouTube, yeah. Starting with Puparia, which has like a 20-minute documentary that goes alongside of it, of like the making of, which this is a hand animated, I don't know what genre to use. It's so cool though. It's full to the brim of like intricacy, and like so densely packed with like love and passion. It's so inspiring. This took 3 years to make, and it's 3 minutes long as like a finished product. So beautiful, like so intricate, so cool, amazing. Speaking of hand animation, which spanned years, Wonder by Mizue Mirai is this project that spanned a year, and every day he would draw 24 pictures or like 24 frames of something, and then do like 1 second a day and have it all blend together into like the finished product. Whimsical and like cell-based, multicolored, very like whirlwindy, kaleidoscopic, musically backed like experience that's like parts drugged out and parts just like very pure and like childlike. The cool part of this in my eyes is the fact that it took so long to make, and he had to do so much each day. You can literally see his intention change like throughout the film, where you can see him like kind of focus on different aspects of art, or different like designs, or like plants versus animals versus cells versus like little creatures versus like the medium changing itself. going in a bunch of different directions, like highlighting or picking different colors. You can like see his attention working in real time, and it's so cool. Something less kind of positive is Spacey by Takashi Ito. One of the coolest people ever. Early 80s experimental film, pre-digital, sort of doing a lot of like analog stuff that is really cool. He plays a lot with form, whether it be like light and sound or like perspective, or in this case for Spacey, it's like this stop motion horror film that lacks any horror at all. It manages to do so much while doing so little. It's just pictures, like stop motion pictures of an empty gymnasium, and by the end of the 10 minutes or however long this is, you are so drained and like, for me, like crying and just dizzy and like nauseated, and it's so impressive to me like how much I'm able to get out of watching this versus like how little is happening on screen. Because something that I think about a lot in terms of like how to like convey something in a movie, I feel like when you get into like the horror space or like wanting to kind of show depravity or like something to like make you like recoil, a lot of stuff in movies like relies on like shock value of showing you something either disturbing or like violent and like making you like recoil because of how like intense it is. Versus in Spacey, I feel like it's the opposite. It's so little is happening and it still manages to get that same result of like nausea and like discomfort and like skin crawling or like eyes watering without having to show you anything disturbing. It's just pictures of a gymnasium spinning or like going through each other, and by the end like you're feeling like you just watched like a Gaspar Noé movie, and it's so cool. So cool, like what he managed to do and how he like plays with medium. Super impressive. Thumbs up. But forgot to say, huge epilepsy warning for this. If you're photosensitive at all, do not watch it. It's intense. Then back to like theater movies. Triangle of Sadness was what I wanted it to be, and it was also kind of underwhelming. It went longer than I thought it would, and there's 3 acts, and I felt like every act I was less interested in. It starts off so good to me, where it focuses on like the couple that's at the forefront of this movie, just highlighting their relationship being flawed, which, if you know me, I am a sucker for. And it worked super well. Really funny, snarky, kind of satirical, and like playing with a lot of ideas of like class and like privilege and like blah blah blah. And then towards the middle, I feel like it relies a little bit too much on like shock value, but like in terms of being like disturbing or like disgusting. And then it kind of meanders at the end and doesn't get to the point fast enough for me, where I was kind of bored towards the end. And then also making a movie that like is inherently political and like talking about class, I feel like you should be saying things more with your chest, and to a certain extent it does, because like in the middle section when they're like on the boat, it is very much like in your face. But I didn't like how ambiguous it was in ending of like who was meant to be redeemable or like who you were supposed to like root for. Wish it would have just like said it louder, basically. But really good. And the Fred Again song at the very end, holy shit, that's a banger. Let's see, another movie that was political and not loud enough in my opinion was Tar, but to a much worse degree. This was such a slow burn, so long. I think it's like 2 hours 40 minutes or something. It felt like 3. God damn, it was bad. It's like too ambiguous and hides behind this like veil of like superficiality and like critique, where it's like if you don't like it, you're part of who they're critiquing, or like, I don't know, like this movie feels so watered down and like reduced and like distilled, like, and I'm not even saying that you can't make a movie about cancel culture, but I feel like it didn't even say anything. Like it was so like flip-floppy and like towing the line on both sides of just like, oh, are they meant to be like redeemable at all? I don't know, what do you think? And it felt like, I felt like it just made the audience do so much heavy lifting because it refused to like take any stance at all, so that it could appeal to like whoever watched it. And so if you watch it like with one lens, you're like, oh wow, this affirms what I think, and then someone with like the opposite lens could still watch it and be like, wow, that affirms what I think too. So cool. I just hate like the like ambiguous, like apolitical sort of like leaning on both and being like, oh, I'm doing neither thing, so you can't get mad at me. It was just lame. I didn't mind the fact that it was trying to take its time and like deliver a slow burn, but it was more like every individual moment didn't even feel like it was going anywhere. Like so many aspects of this, like so many scenes of this, I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but just felt so inconsequential. Like you could take out so much of this and it would be the same movie. And so making you sit through so much of it, like I said, it's almost 3 hours, just to like not even deliver a message was so disappointing and like underwhelming and annoying. Yeah, this movie reminded me that movies can suck. It's been a while since I've gone to theaters and been like disappointed, but this was definitely lackluster for sure. Then let's see, I also watched It Follows in October for like the sort of spooky season. Same with Hereditary. It Follows, I felt also similarly like underwhelmed. It starts off pretty strong where I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then it just meanders and none of like the kind of scares have any real weight to them. And there's like a sense of like invulnerability that like keeps happening where it's like you should be dead like many times over and like you're still kicking and like, and I think the premise was fun, but like I watched the movie and it ended and I was like, that kind of sucked. No. Hereditary though, I mean, do I even really need to talk about it? If you haven't seen it, one of the best horror movies to come out in a long time, and not only because of like the horror imagery, which is like so lasting, like so many aspects of this are like seared into my brain, whether it be like the ants or like on the ceiling or on fire or like headless. It's so creepy. But on top of like all like the scary parts, the little like expository like family dynamics are also so terrifying. Like this is equally like domestic horror, and it's so much in part to Toni Collette. She acts her ass off in this movie. It is so good. I've seen this movie I think like 5 times. Every single time I like finish it and I'm just like, damn, she went crazy. And she did. It's true. It is true. But yeah, this is such a good movie. It's so good. I watched Punch Drunk Love, which was my first Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I enjoyed it, but at the same time I didn't. When I think about it, I can only remember the good parts, which there were like 3, I think, like major parts where I was like, oh, this is good and like lasting and I'm entertained. But there was a lot of like other aspects of this movie that I can't really remember. I do like the sort of feeling it left me with, not knowing what was happening, and like the sense of fantasy to it, really surreal. I'm conflicted. It was uncomfortable, it was like anxiety inducing. It was also soft at certain parts, but I didn't really latch onto the romance aspect. I think that Adam Sandler did act really well, and I did like how like not over the top like the autism aspect of this was. Like it didn't feel like tokenized at all. It was just like a supplementary thing instead of it being like, this movie is about this, which was nice, but I just didn't love it. I don't know. It was fine, middle of the road. Enjoyed it, not writing home about it. I watched Casino, which I felt like I'd already seen before, because if you've seen a movie with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, you have seen this movie. It's one of those like mafia mob movies where it's like narrated over, where it's like, you see, the wise guys always gets to the top, says he's, while they like hurt people and like say slurs and stuff, which, but there's like an aspect of the casino lifestyle, like gambling and movies in general, underbelly of like certain cities and like wealth and like politics, which are fun, and I do think that they're just like both really good actors. But I felt like I'd seen this already. Like I said, like it's not breaking new ground, but it's fun. It's a good movie. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was really soft. It was really sincere and sweet and ephemeral. I had never seen it before, and it left me feeling kind of fuzzy. I don't know. Like I didn't feel sad per se, but I didn't feel good either. It was like this weird middle ground of like being both like melancholic and also hopeful and like wistful, and it's like waking up from a dream and like not really being able to remember everything that happened and just being left with like the feeling. That's what this movie felt like. It felt like listening to that one Ricky Eat Acid song. It was just a really nice movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very sweet. I also watched The Royal Tenenbaums, which is a Wes Anderson movie, which wasn't my favorite, but I also didn't dislike it. I enjoyed how flawed every character was, but it also made it so that I couldn't really sympathize with any of them, and it also went between their like perspectives or like individual stories so often that it kind of felt hard to like really latch onto any of them, because by the time like you're ready to like sink your roots into like whatever story's happening, it would just change and you would have to like get like divert your attention and like forget whatever was happening. There are aspects of it that were good, like certain scenes like the bathroom specifically I remember very vividly. Obviously there's like an aesthetic overarching like theme of like symmetry and color that's like very nice and like pleasing, whatever, but that's like staple Wes Anderson. As far as like the story itself goes, there's a lot of strained family dynamics. It's pretty funny though, like it's quippy and like fast paced, which helps it. But overall, I just didn't really connect to it as much as I have with like other of Wes Anderson's movies that feel very intimate and like romantic. Not that there's not like a romance to this, but just to a lesser degree. Just B tier, I think. I watched The Menu, and I feel similarly to Triangle of Sadness in terms of it's a movie that's kind of meant to be subversive and like political and about class and wealth, but it relies on shock value. Instead of kind of being disgusting like Triangle of Sadness, this one chooses to be disturbing or like violent, which didn't always feel earned, which is my main gripe with this, because I did enjoy it as like a premise and like I was able to buy into it pretty quickly, and like the aesthetic visually was working for me. Like the focus on food and like this like snobbery like high life class critique was fine with me, but then it kind of switches and tries to be disturbing or like unsettling by just showing you graphic violence that does not feel earned or like there was no exposition leading up to it. It's just like, bam, look at this, are you recoiling, we've done something. And doing that like 5 times in a row or whatever started to feel but I will say that I just love Ralph Fiennes. I think he acted super well. He's a little bit too good at being estranged. Walked away from this movie not being like upset by it, but I also wasn't super wowed. There were aspects of it that worked and there were some that didn't, but overall it was good. It just felt like a movie in terms of like the default experience of like what you expect a movie to be. Like you go to the theater, you like enjoy yourself, and then like you leave and you kind of just forget it, but in the moment it was fun. I didn't mind it. Okay, Wax, or the Discovery of Television Among the Bees, was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, period. It made me do that thing where like you finish a movie and then immediately have to like look it up what it meant, where you're like, what the hell? And upon doing research, I found conflicting information, but I'll just relay it and take it with a grain of salt. Allegedly, this was the first movie ever streamed on the internet, and it was also one of the first movies to ever be digitally edited and then put onto film. It's bizarre. It came out in like early 90s, I think, and it is strangely biblical and like hypnotic and like trance-inducing. It's narrated over, and there's these really weird like artifacting of like it feels like watching like a Windows XP wallpaper, the one with all the pipes, like watching that while there's like this electronic ambient music going on, and you're also like hearing like stories about like Cain and Abel and like the Tower of Babel, and seeing like it's all filmed in like a desert. It's so bizarre. It's like this guy in like a beekeeper suit. I'm not even gonna try and explain it. I'll do a horrible job. It's on YouTube. It's like a full like feature-length film though. It's not like a short one like the other ones that are on YouTube. It's lasting. I know that much. I watched it and I forgot that I was watching a movie. Like I was just losing myself and like getting really, really into it. It just left me feeling so bizarre in a good way. It was something. Speaking of something, Bones and All, what the hell was this? Came out of nowhere for me. I did not know that this existed. I knew nothing going into it. Watching it, I was equal parts unsettled and so entertained. It was disturbing, like especially like the first act was making my skin crawl. I was so uncomfortable and just freaked out because I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? I felt like genuine fear for the first time in a while. I think because I didn't know it was a horror movie, and so scary shit was happening, and I was like not prepared for it at all. And then there was also an aspect of this that was so soft and like grainy and sunburnt and warm and like overexposed. It was so cute. Like all of the landscapes, namely, it would show like these very vast just like hills and like just grassy areas and just like uninterrupted, like very much like natural life, and it would show them with this really beautiful score, and it made me so emotional, and it kept happening so much that there was just like a gradual like buildup of something, and like at one point it was just like showing whatever, like a hillside, and I was just crying. It was so pretty. I've never seen anything that this guy's directed before. I know he did Call Me By Your Name, but I was just not prepared, especially like from the first half of being like so like clenched and like afraid and like tight knit of like the horror aspect, to like be shown stuff that's like so like open and like these like beautiful expanses and like this warm like saturated ephemeral like ambient track. I was just like I was getting whiplash basically, being like, oh god, and then being like, ah, and then oh, blah, blah. It was so pretty though, and I feel like if you cry during a movie, you can't pretend it wasn't good. So this was good. I think that there's like mixed reviews on this. I'm not on Twitter or like TikTok or anything, so like I don't know the public perception because no one reviews movies on Instagram, but I like this, so take that with a grain of salt. If this is like being clowned on, then maybe I didn't like it actually, and when I said I cried, I was lying, but I like this a lot. Glass Onion was another one that for me snuck out of nowhere. I went to the movies like on a whim, and I saw this like in the listing, and I didn't even know that there was like a Knives Out sequel, so like I went to see it. So fun. Unpopular opinion, I did not like Knives Out to the same extent that most people did. Like I know that people have it like listed like as one of like their favorites or like their top 5. For me, I just didn't like it that much. I enjoyed it because it was fun and like well written, but the second half of it just didn't really connect with me, and I didn't super enjoy it. I liked seeing the story unfold, but like once everything was on the table and you were kind of piecing it back together, I didn't really love it. I enjoyed it, it was fine, blah blah. The sequel, Knives Out 2, mother of pearl, this movie was so fun. Like it was just such a good time. I enjoyed myself immensely. It was so good. Like it's just exactly what I want like a movie to be, where it's like I turn my brain off and I just smile like the entire time, and then it ends and I can just wander on out into a world that's waiting to welcome me. It's written in a way where like I kind of didn't love it because like there's some critical information that is like being kept from you, which like is fine because obviously like you watch like a whodunit and you're trying to figure it out like the entire time, so having there be like these big twists that are kind of unfair, of being like, oh, but you didn't know that the whole time blank, and it's like, well, how was I supposed to? It was just also interesting how it was done modernized, because I ended up watching like a roundtable video where like the director was a part of it, and hearing him talk about it was really interesting, where he was talking about how in a lot of whodunits and like boxcar mysteries, like you're kind of confined to doing period pieces and like basically like cosplaying like Agatha Christie novels, and how that like as a notion was really bizarre to him, because Agatha Christie wasn't doing that in her time. She was like writing for the time that she was in, being not inherently political, but like engaging in the culture itself, doing movies now and like going back to a time before instead of just writing to the time that you're in like she did felt kind of backwards. So then he kind of doubled down on making the movie as like current as possible, and it really pays off because a lot of the jokes in this feel so current and so funny, like genuinely funny. And I'm sure this movie is gonna feel super dated in like 10 years, but we're not in 10 years, like we're right now, and so it's like it feels to the week, it feels relevant, which is insane. But yeah, just an all-around good time. So this is the list. Okay, looks good. Hello, Pato from the future editing this, and I would probably switch Royal Tenenbaums with Punch Drunk Love. I think I was a little too hard on Punch Drunk Love in this. And also, just to clarify, for Twilight, I'm dividing them between like C to F on terms of how much I enjoyed them, but I think all 5 are F tier, so I'm not saying that Breaking Dawn Part 2 is better than Tar in this, although that's what it looks like. Just clarifying that. Okay. A lot of these are pretty recent, so if you have any fresh thoughts, feel free to share. And if you have any recs, I'm also open to it. What should I watch next? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.